This is episode 584 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Wally, plenty to talk about this week. Just kind of as a housekeeping measure, Governor Lujan Grisham hasn't really been active on signing or vetoing, for that matter, legislation at this point. She's got some time on that. I guess she had some travel plans. I forget where she was this time, but not a lot to report on that front is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and it's one of those, who knows, a lot of the times trying to figure out what's going to happen up there in Santa Fe is like Kremlinology back in the days of Gorbachev. But,
I think it's Kremlinology just in general. We'll go with that metaphor as far as you want to go.
All right, very good. But, it's one of those, not to sound like a soap opera, teaser for the next episode, but will there or won't there be a special session? And, certain things, if you were going to do a special session, you might take a little bit different approach to what you sign and what you don't sign or veto. And again, in New Mexico, pocket veto is the don't sign veto. The impact is pretty much the same. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to go out on a limb, not that anyone asked me, including you. I'd say we're not going to have a special session, but stranger things have happened here in the land of enchantment.
Well, a special session is separate from the signing or vetoing of the bills. Right now, we've got realistically, I would think she would want to call a special session before August, but she could call them back, within a week or two after declaring the special session, that kind of thing. She's got a much more constrained amount of time in order to veto or sign bills, but just not a whole lot of news on that front. Now, talking about some of the economic and policy issues, something that jumped out at me recently in a newspaper article and several other articles online is that a marijuana company, manufacturing and processing to be exact, out in Clovis, recently received, I believe it's $95,000 in LIDA funds for their manufacturing facility. So by manufacturing, I guess, you grow weed. I know that's a newsflash to everybody involved, but packaging, going ahead and processing the plants, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and Paul, can't you, you can...
and I guess gummies and the whole...
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
You can make the whole panoply of various products out of it. Your marijuana butter. I don't want to go on a sound like Bubba on Forrest Gump, but there are a lot of products being made with marijuana.
Yeah, today. Wally's waxing poetic over here. Actually, it's $90,000, but the point remains that this company, and nothing against this company, it's called Vanna, not presumably named after Vanna White, but it seems odd to me that we would use New Mexico taxpayer dollars to subsidize a marijuana facility, not because it's a marijuana facility, because, microbrews and those kinds of folks and others that, some would have a moral problem with, have been receiving taxpayer dollars for years and years and years. But the issue I have with this specifically is that marijuana under federal law does not operate in a free market. It's actually the Articles of Confederation kind of market, in the sense that New Mexico marijuana stays in New Mexico.
Right.
Arizona, Colorado, all the different states have their own micro markets, not because the Constitution doesn't really apply, because the federal government has rules on the books countering marijuana as a legal substance. Those may change here, but for now, the time being is that they're basically on the books, but not super enforced internally. We're subsidizing a product that is meant for a New Mexico only market. And that's the concern in question, because if we have tax policies in place that make it unviable or impossible to create a manufacturing facility without government help, we need to change those policies, not throw subsidies at a business. So I just find this entire situation to be frustrating, because we're just so eager in this state to use tax dollars to subsidize individual businesses, while leaving broader economic policy concerns out of the equation. It really does encapsulate, I think, a lot of the problems with New Mexico, economically speaking.
Yeah, and Paul, from a economic development point of view, the best economic development you can have from a positive impact of the state is when you have something that you produce in your state and export to other places. And so there's a lot of states very much focus their economic development activities on things that fall into that category. And not that, believe me, I'm not one that a business is a business, and if you do something that serve the people just in your own area, that's not a bad thing. But in terms of the overall impact it has on your gross state product, et cetera, it's that sort of thing. And as you say, it's just plain old illegal. So we're kind of at the same place that the railroads, we were right before the railroads. There's a different time zone, but they don't all line up. And so, right now, New Mexico benefits from people driving into Texas into New Mexico, but this is, like, as you say, far from a unregulated or a even national market. It's just this weird local thing that we've brought on ourselves. And then, I'm no cheering from me, but man, there's an abundance. As I drive down the street in Albuquerque, at the rate we're going, the only businesses that will be there in a few years are going to be marijuana dispensaries and car washes. New Mexico has plenty of both of those, but have a feeling that both of those might be suffering a little contraction here in the next few months, and definitely in the next several years.
Yeah, that is a true statement about the number of marijuana shops and car washes. It's quite astonishing. But yeah, if we're going to be using tax dollars to subsidize business, which I do not believe is a proper use of our tax dollars in general, at least it should be for something that is going to provide kind of those economic-based jobs. It's going to be something that is used for export, at least to an extent. Intel being the complete polar opposite of
Right.
Of this.
You can't, you can buy Intel chips in New Mexico, but you can't buy them directly. It has to go to another state and be assembled into a product.
Yeah, I
So,
understand most of them wind up in Israel,
yeah.
ironically, considering recent topics of conversation. But yeah, I think they constantly show up as one of New Mexico's largest national trading partners, because
Right.
we don't have that much in the way of manufacturing. And I don't think oil and gas gets factored into all that.
And Paul, not to belabor this point, but only if there was something we could do in Santa Fe to maybe cut a tax broadly across all businesses that would help all businesses and avoid double taxation. Maybe the gross receipts tax could be reformed. I've said for years that the money we've spent kind of doing these one-off, trying to pick winners and losers, if we just reform that a little bit, I do believe we would have been way further ahead than we are now economically. With the thing that we said we want, economic diversity, and the thing that we do to get it is do things that actually stifle economic diversity here in New Mexico. It's not a good plan we're on right now.
Yeah, that might be a little bridge too far there, Wally. I don't know if we can actually embrace broad-based pro-growth tax policies in this state.
Well, we don't have the money in Santa Fe to do it, Paul.
Yeah.
We're just living, month to month there on our state budget.
All right. Well, with
That's enough sarcasm.
Sarcasm of the day, yeah.
One show.
Well, speaking of things that don't make sense, but do in retrospect. I don't remember what episode number, but you could go back and hear a conversation between us about the United Soccer Stadium, the minor league soccer stadium, soccer team that's based here in Albuquerque. Currently plays at Isotopes Park. There was a stadium voted down a few years ago by the voters that would have been mostly almost all taxpayer dollars. It also would have been downtown near the rail yards. The team went back to the drawing board and, with the support of Mayor Keller, went to Balloon Fiesta Park, said they're going to put $30 million into the stadium with an additional $13.5 million of state capital outlay money. We looked at it and said, but citizens voted down a $60 to $70 million stadium. And then we wait 2 years, construction prices go up approximately double. That's according to LFC. And you're going to build a $43 million soccer stadium at Balloon Fiesta Park that was going to cost 60 to 70 million downtown. The math doesn't add up. Well, it's starting to add up. That's because in the recent legislative session, the legislature, and I'm sure Governor Lujan Grisham had a lot to do with this, another $16 million in state funding for the United Soccer Stadium at Balloon Fiesta Park, which takes us to a total of $60 million. Now, is that enough money to complete the stadium? Maybe, maybe not, but this governor's going to be around for another 2 sessions. Unless something goes completely haywire and Republicans win a seat, which that doesn't even preclude money being set aside for state. I mean, capital outlay gets all kinds of goofy stuff in it, almost irregardless of party, because the system is widely recognized as completely broken. You could easily see more money poured into the United Stadium from the taxpayers. The oil and gas boom isn't going anywhere. And
yeah, that's the point I was going to make is, yes, we have not seen the end of oil and gas in New Mexico. That is, its demise is far from imminent.
Yeah. So now we, just to kind of put a finer point on it, we are talking about $60 million available to construct the United Stadium. It's nothing's happened yet. I'm sure that it'll take some time. I would expect that it'll probably get started. They'll turn some dirt before next legislative session, but which essentially means during the calendar year here we're in. But there's always more money available for this kind of thing, given the current people at play. And, so ironically, of course, city taxpayers wisely turned down the funding of this stadium. And, in true New Mexico fashion, rather than saying, hey, you soccer team, put up your own money, the state comes in and puts up everybody's money for the stadium. Of course, with such a shallow vision of what were we just talking about, broad-based tax reform and any actual effort to unleash New Mexico's economy, we're just sitting on piles of money. So this is one small part of that pile of money that's going to get spent on the soccer stadium. $16 million. There's a line item in the capital outlay bill. You can go find it at airsofenchantment.com. We've got a link directly to that line item. So check that out. You see where the money is flowing, and it's one of the bigger provisions in the capital outlay bill, but this is where you would actually also have an opportunity to do something about certain roads. You would not just driving down the roads in Albuquerque and across the state, you would not necessarily think that we are in a state of unlimited funding, given the poor condition of the roads in our state and city.
Yes, Paul, and I will second that. The roads in general, there's always exceptions on something that's been redone. But, Interstate 40 is horrible. A lot of the U.S. highways that are out in the hinterlands of New Mexico are getting to be, beyond just in poor condition, downright dangerous with huge potholes and the sort of thing that if you're driving along in your Tesla on autopilot, beware because it's pretty bad out there.
Yeah, and it should be noted that, while we traditionally think of money as the primary resource here, we're also talking about construction crews and uh, ingredients in building anything. You're putting those into one thing, a soccer stadium, and it's obviously, you're not using as much blacktop, but the point being that when you're paying for these kinds of projects, you are taking not just money, but equipment and resources away from doing other construction projects with them in today's constrained economy, where the constraint is more on those resources and the labor that goes into them, not necessarily with money. We're in a situation where the federal government, while it is in debt, is pouring money into various construction projects, mostly renewable so-called energy, but not only. And the state, of course, has oodles of money that they're also using. And the UnitedStadium is a construction project. Those resources could go elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And bring that kind of full circle. It does highlight the fact that resource availability is a huge issue. It's the driving constraint. Unemployment's very low, and one of the reasons it's very low is the labor participation rate is so low. There's so many people of working age that have left the workforce, and it really is starting to show up in more and more places around our state.
Yeah, I was quick aside. I was part of a luncheon meeting involving a lot of businesses, including several restaurants, and I was very impressed at how up on the issue of workforce participation these folks were. It was gratifying because we've been talking about workforce participation at the Rio Grande Foundation for many years. The Journal has caught up on that and has done a pretty decent job in highlighting and reporting on that issue. And it's clearly something that businesses and business owners also understand. Maybe maybe voters aren't far behind. We'll find out. There's always been that big disconnect
Yeah.
between what businesses think and say and what the voting public actually comprehends and votes on. So anyway, speaking of subsidies, our favorite topic, it's getting to be right up there with gross receipts tax and other, bingo spots. EVs and EV subsidies. Now we have P&M, Public Service Company of New Mexico, the largest utility or just private utility in the state, or publicly held non-governmental utility. $37 million that they are putting up thanks to the transportation electrification program. I don't remember and don't know if that is a program that the legislature told them to set up or the PRC told them to set up, but ultimately this is P&M responding to government rules and regulations. While you can say, well, P&M benefits from electric vehicles and electrification, broadly speaking, to an extent, to the extent that they have the financial wherewithal to bring enough electricity online to fuel all these things, they are taking $37 million and putting them into higher rates, taking that money out of higher rates. So they're charging us more money, and they're going to dump that $37 million into various subsidies and other ways for people to drive electric vehicles, with an emphasis on low-income New Mexicans being able to obtain those vaunted electric vehicles. So just another subsidy program for these electric vehicles, which are already receiving federal subsidies, state subsidies, state mandates, state charging station subsidies, EV charging station subsidies at the federal and state level. Now here we are with the utility. So You need a little bit of a scorecard just to keep up with all the various EV subsidies and mandates.
Yeah, and Paul, and you bring up an interesting point is that, yes, I did read the phrase relative to assisting low income people getting into EVs, which, for a variety of reasons, are the least likely to want them. And so, the definition of economic efficiency isn't subsidizing the most inefficient parts of your economy. And it sort of seems like that's the path we're on with this EV thing. And it'll be interesting to see where this money goes and what impact it has. And because transportation is such a it's such a huge industry with a lot of interrelated parts. If things don't all come together with the EV supply chain, demand, charging stations, and the like, it's going to be possible that we're spending a lot of money on things that really won't show economic benefit or practical benefit in the near future. So, yeah, just another one of those. And yeah, you layer enough subsidies on, is it going to make it work, or is it just going to make it more expensive from a taxpayer point of view?
Well, and it also makes it harder to fully comprehend. It masks the overall costs of the policy, which is, I believe, one of the features, not bugs,
Yeah,
of this
that's
particular
how it's
approach.
designed. So,
Now, real quickly, all is not rosy on the EV front for the advocates thereof. Mercedes-Benz, and if there's a car company that I think has the respect of people, when Mercedes-Benz starts talking about something, that's people listen because they have such a long and august track record with automobiles, quality, and trends. They backed away from plans to phase out gas-powered vehicles by 2030. Now, I know some other vehicle manufacturing companies have made similar pledges, but Mercedes has just officially said, no, we're going to keep selling gas-powered cars. Their most recent statement is that EVs in 2030 will be more like 50% of its fleet. So that's a pretty big miss when you're talking about that kind of policy. But also, when you're producing gas vehicles and electric vehicles, it doesn't really matter whether it's 50%, 25%, or any number thereabouts, because as long as you keep going down the gas-powered car market, you're going to continue to update, you're going to continue to improve. You're not just focusing and getting out of the gas-powered car market, which that would be a truly bold move if and when that ever happens. So Mercedes-Benz making a big decision that I think is in line with reality. So kudos to them, and I think that puts pressure on other companies that have said, "Oh yeah, we're going to get out of gas-powered vehicles in the near future."
yeah, and it seems like you're seeing more and more car companies come around to this. There's definitely a slowing of their plans. And, just look at a company like Mercedes that actually has very many brands under its corporate ownership now. Guess what? They don't all just sell their vehicles. Like in the U.S., Mercedes and the like tend to be high end luxury brands, but they sell trucks to Sub-Saharan Africa, Paul. And so, what is the electric charging station in Africa right now? And if they were to go all electric, markets like that would probably be out of reach completely for them. The other fact that I saw the other day was there was a group that was touting how much more affordable electric vehicles are becoming, and that shows that just what a juggernaut it is. When in fact it's the exact opposite. The reason the prices come down tremendously is the demand has come down, and there's a lot of excess supply. So we're going to need efficiencies, but just compared to the early days of the personal computer market, as demand was growing and supply was growing, the price was coming down. This is not that at all. This is kind of a retrenchment in the industry because the demand just isn't there, and there's a lot of variability in what's going to happen.
Yeah, you look at pretty much any new technology that is commonplace in today's homes, and it is a straight curve upward. There may be some kind of economic crisis or supply chain bottleneck or something that slows that overall transition, but you very rarely have the kind of stalling out of adoption that we've seen with electric vehicles. And again, not to put too fine a point on it, but that's because they are at best not ready for prime time in terms of their utility relative to a gas powered vehicle. Uh, will they ever be? That is, I think, a open question. So,
Yeah, and the best you can say about them in today's world is they're a very niche product. So they are great for some people in some uses, but they're not the Swiss Army knife that the internal combustion engine powered vehicle is here in our country or anywhere else around the world.
absolutely. In another bingo card item, we have all these things. We talked about the guardrails not being able to contain electric vehicles because of their weight and low center of gravity. Now, from the Telegraph, this is the UK Telegraph. Electric car charger is pulled over fears hackers could use it to attack the national grid. Now, if one British company has a electric charging unit that could be used to take down the electrical grid, that has to mean that this is a problem that could be associated with other EV charging units. Um, and if that's the case, are we really in a position where uh, the regulators are going to make sure that these issues are not going to arise and that there won't be any negative impacts from the use of these charging stations to attack the national grid? I suspect that at some point, some nation's grid is going to be attacked by someone using an EV charging unit in a bad way. So uh, there's a lot of safety issues that I think at this point are being ignored. See the aforementioned uh, guardrails and others, but I don't know. I would have never put that one on my bingo card with regard to electric vehicles and their myriad problems. But I guess security and making sure that there's no way to, and I am not a hacker. I would not be a good bad guy hacker or a good guy hacker. I'm not a white hat hacker. I do know that's the term, but I have no idea how you'd even accomplish this. But hopefully they can figure out a way to stop this from being a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, things like this scare me more than most people. I've worked in the electric industry, and they would find these security breaches in various pieces of equipment over the years, and it's like, oh my goodness, I'm glad we found this before the bad guys really got a hold of it. The other issue with EVs is that, particularly with these fast charge stations, you need a lot of feeder capacity to get that in there. And so, uh, I'm not sure what this is. And sometimes these stories are overblown. But yeah, I'm with you. I would certainly like somebody to just take a little look at this. What might it do and how might it be used maliciously and try to prevent that on the front end?
Okay, come clean, Wally. Were you one of those people that stockpiled toilet paper and were in your underground bunker on Y2K?
So Paul, I worked on the team like for 3 years, and a year
The team as in
a
pianist,
corporate
a
team,
corporate
yeah.
team. Okay.
And a year out, I knew that Y2K was going to be the biggest nothing burger to ever hit the world. And so all the things to the point where, they're like, oh, this won't work, that won't work. The section I was assigned to, we didn't find one piece of equipment that needed, and again, it wasn't the whole company, but we had like 50 pieces of equipment. We didn't find one that needed to be touched. I had a PC that supposedly there was a big fix. I didn't fix it. And by God, that computer did break 11 years later. And so it's one of those that no, I had done enough work to be very confident that Y2K was not going to be anything. As I look back, I do believe it was a conspiracy of the IT industry and their professionals in industry and attorneys to put one over on
Ooh.
CEOs that lacked technical capability and just got to buy a lot of cool toys. Really, that is there is no exaggeration in my statement. So.
Wow, I did not think we were going down that little rabbit hole, but hey, some future slow news week we'll have to get into the Alex Jones-esque conspiracy.
And these are not okay, Paul. They're not conspiracies if they all happen. That I just want to say.
All right. I like it. I like where this is going. This is good fodder for a future show. Well, we're still not done with EVs. Late last night, I was on my computer sending show note ideas to Wally, and then a company called Go Banking Rates, publishing this on Yahoo Finance, apparently they've got 2023 numbers on the EV kind of percent of market share that we have here in all 50 states. But of course, looking at New Mexico, we have, according to this report, 7,080 registered electric vehicles in the state of New Mexico, which is a robust 0.37% of vehicles on the road. So that's lower than even
I would have picked a little higher.
Said. But again,
and
this was on
the
Yahoo
total
Finance.
vehicles in New Mexico, about 1 million, I would guess, 800,000, something
about
like
right,
that.
yeah.
No, that's amazing. And I do, Paul, want to do a shout out to Yahoo News. During COVID, they wouldn't report news. They wouldn't allow comments. They didn't do anything, but they are back with a vengeance, running stories that are apparently well researched and address issues. And so, yeah, that's not surprising. It came from them. I'm surprised they made it through COVID, though, because I think they almost had a death wish. But they're bringing some very interesting. I actually go to their news sites again. So
yeah, and especially on the EV issue, there's stories, and I'm sure their algorithm detects that I'm clicking on the EV stories.
But the fact that the stories are there,
right?
That's what's
much like Facebook realizes that I like pictures of dogs, cute dogs. They flood my feed with sad dog stories and dog pictures and this, that, and the other. But I'll get off the algorithm side of things there, and more to come on the Y2K scandal. But we got to actually finish out this show because, boy, so op-eds in the Albuquerque Journal, aside from mine and some others that get written in the paper, and of course, I think their reconstituted editorial group has moved somewhat to the right, noticeably to the right. I think over the years, the Journal has, editorially speaking, hovered from center to center right, and now they're close to being, fairly, really a conservative editorial page. But they give people access to hang themselves on their own petard. And in the case of this op-ed, boy, I consider it one of the very most out of touch opinion pieces I have ever seen in the Journal. And that is saying something. And it's by Representatives Joanne Ferrari, Andrea Romero, Angelica Rubio, Liz Thompson, and State Senator Brenda McKenna. Now, I don't know McKenna very well, but I do know those reps. And that is a who's who of the most crazy left-wingers. Certainly Romero, Rubio, and Thompson. That's a trio of left-wing people. And so this is the 24 legislative session was a true public safety success, which right there, I think, highlights how out of touch this piece is. But they start with Governor Lujan Grisham and many of our Republican colleagues have voiced their disappointment that we didn't accomplish more on public safety. So when you lump in Lujan Grisham and the Republicans, like that's just some kind of Jedi mind trick right there.
Yes.
Because I have said repeatedly that the progressives are not serious about addressing crime in New Mexico. that if the governor actually wants to do something on crime as opposed to gun grabbing, she and the Republicans and the moderate Democrats might actually have room for working together and achieving something. But it's these progressives, and I think the Speaker of the House falls into that category, and numerous others. I mean, we're talking probably a third of the 112 members of the legislature, maybe 35 out of 112. So not quite a third, but in that ballpark are hardcore progressives, and these are some of the hardest of the hardcore. So here are a few bills that they tout as successes in the public safety, anti-crime realm from this past session. HB 195, which addresses affordable housing by earmarking $125 million to help communities build and rehabilitate housing for middle and working class New Mexicans.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yep.
SB 17, critical investments for rural hospitals. Okay. And then HB 303, which establishes a pilot program to provide monetary stipends covering housing, food, transportation, and registration fees for adults attending workforce training programs. Okay. Now, do any of those move the needle in any way, shape, or form on crime?
You know, it would move the needle. Maybe that twitch. You know, if you've ever seen the gauge on a radio board, it'll twitch over there. Well, Paul, as I read that their piece, and a couple of thoughts came to mind. One, they just use terminology and concepts and switch them about, indiscriminately. And so they say, research has shown that you can't arrest our way out of homelessness, addiction, mental illness, or poverty.
Right.
I would tend to agree with that. Having said that, if you have homeless people that are killing people and stealing and doing other things, that, yeah, you probably can arrest your way out of that. And there's an awful lot of data to show that you indeed, if you arrest and incarcerate the people that are committing crime goes lower.
Well, I that's another line in the article that I thought merited some attention because nobody is proposing to arrest our way out of homelessness, addiction, and mental illness or poverty. No, if we're going to arrest ourselves out of a problem, it should be the crime problem.
Yeah.
They conveniently leave out the criminals from the arrest and incarcerate equation. It's like, well, homelessness. No, my solution is not that these people need to be arrested. It's that they need to be moved. They need to be moved off of public property. And then when they commit, if they do, a criminal act, that's when you arrest them and put them in jail. Addiction, well, obviously, addicts and homelessness, there's a lot of people who wind up in a place of criminality after being addicted to substances. Same with mental illness. In poverty, well, poverty has almost nothing to do with criminality specifically. I mean, they've done studies that showed that really, even during the Great Depression, which is a materially speaking much more poor time period than anybody living today has ever experienced, that area did not really result in an increase in crime. So they're very manipulative of the language. I agree.
Yeah, and it's one of those that group, and I don't know every one of those, but they're starting to have a little bit of I don't know, the aura of the squad in Washington. They just say stuff, and no one seems to challenge them very often, and there isn't a lot of logic or a lot of facts or even a lot of effectiveness in anything they propose, but that doesn't keep them from proposing it. And then when they do fail on something like crime, this was not the crime session, to just throw everything. It's like, heck, do the fact that we cut income taxes, that would lower crime. That's just as likely to do it as any of the other things that they cited in their op-ed.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things that could be done to address crime issues, to improve overall quality of life here. I mean, heaven forbid, school choice. Ooh,
Yeah.
now solving our education problems woes is certainly not on their agenda. For anybody in the Republican political side of things, I personally think that Republicans could and should, not that Lujan Grisham is somebody to advocate on behalf of or talk about in a positive way, but to pressure her and to highlight the fact that the progressives are completely out to lunch on crime. They're not serious about it. And that if we're going to address crime, that Governor Lujan Grisham has the opportunity to work with Republicans on some, moderate public policy reforms. They may not be Republican policy reforms when it comes to crime, but they could be reasonable, common sense crime issues. She has to get off the idea that guns equals crime kind of mindset, but calling that out, highlighting those potential areas that they can work together, and essentially throwing the progressives under the bus for a lot of crime issues. I think this piece is a big target and a big opportunity for Republicans to use that rhetoric as we hit the 112 members up election.
I absolutely agree with you, Paul, and you are right. The governor it seems like that she had her guns are crime initiative. To say that failed, it certainly failed nationally. It failed from a policy point of view, and even this last time, I'm not minimizing the fact that it's just another right was infringed upon with the 7-day waiting period. Fine, whatever, but that's just not that big of a thing. The people who are committing gun crimes aren't going and buying new guns. There's a
Right.
ready available supply of stolen and off market guns that can be done. So that's not the main issue that we're facing. We have crime issues in New Mexico, no doubt about it. We just don't necessarily have policies designed to address them. I think that's the point.
Yeah, the thing with all the crime bills or the gun bills, I should say, is that the governor can always say, or somebody who is anti-Second Amendment, as the governor is, can always say, oh, they didn't give me enough. They didn't give me what we truly needed, because the problem isn't going to be solved or even mitigated with any of the policies like a 7-day waiting period. It's just going to be another infringement on the Second Amendment. So we're not going to get to a place. There's no place that we can get to that would actually address our crime problems in this state, because they're not going the right direction on it. So with that, that hilariously out of touch article, but sadly written by seated members of the New Mexico legislature. There's plenty of people, with the equivalent of me on the left wing of the, spectrum that maybe are a little crazier, but this one is from a group of seated elected officials to make those arguments. I thought was pretty rich. All right. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.